With draft season already among us, I'm going to be going over a guide to help you be successful in 2022 when constructing and developing a game plan for how you should go about your fantasy football strategy. You want to first begin, of course, in the very beginning, which is your first 2 rounds. This is very crucial. You cannot mess up here. What we're seeing from early consensus in ADP is that running backs are going to be targeted really heavily in the first 2 rounds. Check out this quote from Mike Clay. In an average 12-team league, roughly 50% of the picks in the first 3 rounds will be running backs. Now the next question is, if I was going to be drafting within the first couple picks of the first round, where would I go? The only clear-cut answer I would have within the first 5 picks would be Jonathan Taylor, of course, at the very top, and from there maybe Christian McCaffrey at number 2, but then I would probably go ahead and pivot and go to wide receiver and invest in Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson. And I know that there's some questions that as to why I wouldn't go Derrick Henry or maybe even Austin Eckler, but check out this quote. It says here, since 2015, the number of running backs who finish as top 12 options that are at least 27 years old is declining. Here's the list of how many running backs have ended in the top 12 that were 27 years or older. The total was 4 in 2015, 4 again in 2016, 3 in 2017, and since 2018 there hasn't been more than 1 running back that has ended in the top 12 that was actually 27 years or older. And because of statistics like this, that is why I'm going to pivot and would rather go wide receiver earlier in the draft as opposed to investing in some of these question marks. Check this one out too. It says here, the average age of top 15 scoring fantasy running backs over the past 5 years is 24.1 years old, and only 6 of the 75 running backs in the sample were 27 years or older. So when it comes to drafting these early round running backs, age does matter and play a factor in how you should go about drafting them. Okay, so now we've come to the second half of the first round. If I'm picking anywhere between the 6th and the 12th pick of the first round, I'm now going to consider either going with one of the top tight ends, or if one of those wide receivers are still available, like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, or even Cooper Kupp, I'll invest there. But this is where I'll now maximize to see if I can at least secure myself one solid running back that I feel confident in. But just in case you're wondering, running backs I would consider between the 6th and 12th picks of the first round would be running backs like Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, and DeAndre Swift. I love these players a lot in 2022 because of the volume that they're going to be getting and also the involvement that they'll have in their offenses. A lot of draft strategies, such as the robust running back strategy, actually emphasize the importance of getting as many running backs as possible. But what I would typically do in 2022 is I would try to at least secure one solid running back that I feel confident in. And when you go with back-to-back running backs, you do better your chances, but it in no way guarantees success with securing depth at the running back position. The main key is to keep your talent diversified. So what I mean by that is you want to secure as much potential volume that a player is going to be projected to get, and also try to reduce any kind of player that is in a system that may hinder volume from coming his way. So essentially your first 2 rounds, you want to secure a top flight running back, or what I would do as well in this upcoming season is get myself one of those top end wide receivers, so then that way I can secure 2 of the most important positions in fantasy football. So the first 2 rounds, what you want to do is you want to secure yourself a high volume running back. If you can't secure yourself a second running back, I would then go with at least securing a top elite wide receiver. Okay, so now we're on to rounds 3 through 7. This is the middle of the draft. This is where I typically would want to maximize on my wide receiver depth, especially if I'm in a PPR league. And the reason why this is important is because there's so much depth at the position already, and it's so important to make sure that you actually select the right kind of wide receiver. But before I go into that, check out this quote from Mike Clay. Over the past 5 seasons, 42 of the 50 wide receivers in fantasy football on a points per game basis were selected in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. And the reason why this is important is because you saw this last season with a lot of wide receivers that were actually highly coveted in the NFL draft, such as Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith. Here are some examples of wide receivers that I'll be targeting in the middle rounds of drafts. Around the 3rd or 4th round range, I'm going to try to get myself Terry McClaurin from the Washington Commanders. And the reason why I'm big on him, I know that Carson Wentz isn't much much of an upgrade at the quarterback position, but regardless, Terry McClaurin has had at least 900 receiving yards each of the seasons that he's been in the NFL, and he's coming off 2 back-to-back seasons where he's had over 1,000. He's also averaged at least 12.6 fantasy points per game, making him a top 30 wide receiver since entering the league. Another wide receiver that I'm targeting within this range is also Rashod Bateman from the Baltimore Ravens. Just to kick things off, Marquise Hollywood Brown is now gone from Baltimore, which means that there is now 145 vacated targets for Bateman. What I also like about Rashod Bateman is that his win rate versus man coverage was phenomenal in 2021. He actually ranked 26th, and just to give you context as to why that's important, check this list out. So Justin Jefferson in this same statistic ranked 23rd, Devontae Adams ranked 20, Cooper Kupp ranked 19th, Deebo Samuel ranked 42nd, and Jamar Chase was 43rd. And all these players were top 10 wide receivers, so you now give the targets as well as the success that he has in man coverage. I feel that this is a great combination for Rashod Bateman to have a phenomenal season in 2022. Another wide receiver that's available during this part of the draft that easily gets overlooked is Brandin Cooks of the Houston Texans. This isn't really a sexy name going into the fantasy season, but however, Brandin Cooks has had sustainable success over the last 7 seasons. And just to give you context, 6 out of the last 7 seasons, he's had over 1,000 receiving yards. And during that span, there hasn't been a season where he has been a top 20 wide receiver, and he also had a season in there where he was a top 9 wide receiver. Another option that you can go with here during this part of the draft is actually securing yourself running back handcuffs that also have flex value. Examples are Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard, even Melvin Gordon. Once you've secured your wide receiver depth and you have your solid running backs, look to now invest in high upside running backs where, if God forbid there was an injury to the primary starter of that roster, these players could have easily top 5 upside. So now we're coming towards the tail end of the middle of the draft, and that's rounds 8 through 12. I personally like to invest in a tight end or a quarterback in this range, being that I personally do not like to invest in tight end or quarterback early in the draft. And the good thing is you can actually get some pretty good value, especially with the current consensus of where ADP is at. So 2 tight ends that I would love to target during this part of the draft are Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz. And the reason why I'm big on Dallas Goedert is not just because I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. And I didn't just do this on purpose because I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. Hopefully I get a shout out one day from the Eagles. Anyways, the point is, the reason why I'm big on Dallas Goedert in 2022 is because he's had his air yards increase each season that he's come into the league by an average of 26%. With Dallas Goedert's current ADP, along with the projections that I have slated for him, I think this is a great formula for success for 2022 for Dallas Goedert. Zach Ertz, since he got traded to Arizona, we saw a great success connection there with Kyler Murray, and I believe that that'll continue. Now, if you wanted to go with quarterbacks, I would target either like a Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, and there's so many reasons why I'm big on them, but their ADPs and what they can potentially do in 2022 is very favorable and actually a really good price at that range. 2 wide receivers that I would look to target here as well would be wide receivers like Kadarius Toney from the New York Giants and Garrett Wilson from the New York Jets. Now, if you're looking for running back, at this point now I'm looking for high upside. And typically in keeper leagues, I like to now invest in high upside running backs that are either rookies or second year running backs. And in this example, I will target someone like Isaiah Spiller or even James Cook. And then as we get to the latter part of the draft, now what I'm focusing on is my plug and play handcuffs. And what those are, typically backups that have no value, not even any standalone flex value, unless there is an injury to the primary starter of that particular offense. So examples of this will be like Alexander Madison out of the Minnesota Vikings, Darrell Henderson for the Los Angeles Rams, or even Jamal Williams for DeAndre Swift for the Detroit Lions. So the point is, the way that you construct your lineup is essential to how you begin your season. And just note this is a basic formula that I believe will work out for you in 2022 that I have seen success in previous seasons. Just as a disclaimer, you don't win your league at the draft, but you do set yourself a strong foundation, so then that way when you make your trades, when you're staying active on the waiver wire, you have a good foundation to build off of. If you got value out of any of this, be sure to hit that like button, also subscribe, and check out some of these other videos where I go over different draft strategies that you can use to be successful in 2022. And I also have different lists of players to avoid and to draft as well. Be sure to comment below any questions that you may have, but in the meantime and in between time, keep it 100.